We would like to thank the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption for sponsoring this podcast. The Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption believes that together we can ensure every child has a permanent, loving family. Read stories of youth and families touched by adoption, including adoption from foster care, and access resources for parents, caregivers, and child welfare professionals at davethomasfoundation.org. Welcome to Creating a Family, talk about adoption, foster care, and kinship care. My name is Tracy Whitney, and I am the content director for creatingafamily.org. Today, we're going to dive into a conversation about how to prepare foster youth that may be aging out of the system or kinship young people who are getting ready to launch into adulthood. And to help us do that, we have Vernell Gore. She is the program representative for youth villages, in Eastern North Carolina. She began as a LifeSet specialist working with youth transitioning out of foster care, and she now uses her voice to work with community partners to help bridge the gap for more youth who need support in transitioning from foster care successfully. Joined by Vernell is also Nick Scarlotta. He is the executive director of Bridge to Brighter, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting youth in and aging out of foster care through resources and programming that helps them achieve their goals. We're also very fortunate to have him as a Creating a Family board member. So thank you both for joining us today. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you.
Glad to be with you. Thank you.
Each of your organizations work closely with young people who are transitioning out of foster care. So in today's conversation, we want to include the kids that are transitioning out of kinship care as well, because young people who are being raised by relatives, such as grandparents, aunts, and uncles, often face some of the very same challenges that foster youth face. So I'd like to hear from each of you. What makes this stage of life particularly challenging for young people in foster or kinship care compared to their peers? And we'll start with Vernell.
For youth that are in foster care, there's a history of instability in relationships. And that's a big factor that many of the youth face when they're exiting foster care. Who do I go to now? You know, they may have had the social worker, they may have had kinship provider who provided care for a period of time. But at 18, it's like you have to step into your next step. Mm-hmm. And for youth, they are so uncertain as to what that step can be. And then not having a support system there can cause a lot of weight on that youth. So that's a big factor. Someone that lives in a home with their parents or their extended family, they have those kind of resources that they can go to. They have the grandmother they can go ask the question about relationship. They have, community connections, even with churches, that they can depend on someone in the community. But for those in foster care and kinship care, they may not have that continual stability of relationships, and that's a big factor.
Nick, would you have anything to add to that?
I think Vernell hit it right on the head. That was the word that I wrote down, instability.
Yep. Instability.
So obviously for the youth in foster care, they lack that family and housing stability. And then as they're aging out, they're hit with a number of things. That if they're in a group home or even a foster home, and they have to transition, they're turning 18, they're graduating high school, and then they're faced with, where am I going to stay? Where's my next meal coming from?
Right.
So all of that instability, I go from stability of the system,
right,
and there might be instability there as well, but they have the supports, and then they age out, and it's finding those supports and resources to make a successful transition, and often the resources are limited.
So Nick, you mentioned a successful transition to adulthood. Could you kind of give us a little bit of a snapshot of what that might look like?
Well, I think it looks different for each youth. And as we know, each youth bring their own story, and those stories vary. And so what a successful transition looks like depends on what they want to achieve. All of these youth that are aging out of foster care, they have goals and dreams like the rest of us and all other children. It's just helping them achieve that because they don't have, again, that stability. So for one, it might be finishing school, graduating high school, potentially going on to a post-secondary education. It may be pursuing a trade. It may be stability of a job. So there are a number of things that each youth would want to achieve as far as defining a successful transition. So yeah, it varies from youth to youth.
So from that conversation then, Vernell, what would be some of the common misperceptions that we caregivers or the professionals in their lives might have about their transition from being a child to becoming an adult?
I think one of the big misconceptions is that age means they're ready. 18 does not mean you're ready for life. And especially if you come from a situation where you have such instability, home life instability, relationships instability, learning how to draw strength of connectedness with community and support systems because it's always changing. So thinking that at 18, okay, you're ready and you'll figure it out. I've had some people used to tell me that, they just said, you'll figure it out. I don't know what to do. And we have a philosophy at our organization. It's not always about will. Sometimes it's about skill. So dealing with sometimes with professionals, you may tell a youth to go and apply for a job. And they're saying, I want a job. I had a youth that was like that. Every time I met with him, it's like, Miss V, I want a job. And so I would give him all these job leads. And I would go back the next week and I'm like, did you apply? And he's like, no. And then one day I'm like, okay, I'm missing something. It's not him. I'm missing something. So I said, we're just going to go have lunch. And, you got a free day today. And we went and we ate. And I took my computer in with me and it hit me. Maybe he don't know how to fill out the application. So it wasn't about that he didn't want the job. He didn't know how to start the process. So we sat there and filled out the application and then I did it so he would also have a model application he could use later. And then he said, I want to go turn this in today. And I'm like, okay. So I drove him, we printed it out and drove him. And he had an interview that day and got the job on the spot, So sometimes professionals have to kind of back up. We see things with the professional lens, but sometimes we have to kind of relate to them where they are. And that helps them to step into it. And sometimes it's just a matter of guiding. Another thing that I think people tend to do is wait until the youth is getting ready to age out and then start trying to put so much on them that they need to start practicing. They're going to catch it. They feel like they're going to catch it. They're going to get it. And I tell people all the time, we look from the lens of experience doing it. But now you putting a youth in a situation where they got to gain the knowledge and practice the experience at the same time. That's a lot. That's a lot. And I think that's a misconception as well.
Yeah. And I would add to that the fact that many of our young people that are impacted by the foster care system or by kinship care are kind of like multiple kids in one body. So they may have maturity skills in academia, but they don't really have social life skills that would help them know how to greet somebody in an interview or even just like you said, start the application process. So many kids in one body often means that not only are they not developmentally ready at 18, and I will never for the life of me understand what 18 became the magic number, but then they're also like an 18-year-old with like 14-year-old social skills and, 10-year-old reading skills and all of those things in one body. And it makes for a lot of, we just look at them as an 18-year-old if we're not careful. Yeah.
Can I add that Vernell said it very well, but the word that I was thinking of was expectations. So certain expectations at a certain age. Okay, all of a sudden you turn 18 and you're supposed to do X, Y, Z. And while it's important that we obviously need to teach youth as they're aging out, as they turn 18, once you're, quote, an adult by law, your actions can have consequences that go along with that. So
Yep.
one of the things that we focus on at Bridge to Brighter is teaching those independent living and life skills to help the youth make that transition. And like both of you had said, they may want to, but they might not know how.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it's, walking them through that process and helping them along the way.
Yeah. So when, Nick, you're working with a young person and you're aware that they're getting ready to age out of care or they're getting ready to turn 18, what are the key ingredients that you think need to be in place to help them start that process and be successful?
So I'll just tell you a little bit about the process here in Wisconsin. I'm not sure if it's the same in all states or across the country, but at age 17 in the foster care system in Wisconsin, you're eligible for independent living.
Mm-hmm.
So our experience to date, and next month it'll be 5 years that Bridge to Brighter's been in existence. The younger we are able to get the youth, the better, because we're able to start at a younger age of teaching those life skills and independent living skills and making sure that they are ready for that transition. So we look at those skills and then talk with the youth, and they might feel comfortable with certain skills but uncomfortable with other skills. So it's teaching them those skills. And then we do a life plan with them, and we have goals in all different areas: education, employment, social skills, community, budget and finance. So
that's a big one.
It's a huge one. It's a huge one.
Yeah.
So helping them learn all those skills and teaching them those skills so they are ready.
Yeah.
So we are looking for youth that are determined, want to make a difference, that are motivated.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal is to help them achieve their goals. So again, it's different with each youth. Our program is very individualized. It's not, quote, cookie cutter in that, one youth might want to graduate high school, pursue post-secondary education. One might want to pursue a trade. We might get a youth that either may or may not have their driver's license. So then you pursue that goal. So it's a process with each youth, and it's helping them along the way to get to that, end goal.
So you're thinking in the big picture, you're helping them address issues of housing, you're helping them address issues of some basic financial skills that they can build on. I'm assuming then that also would include not just getting a job and how to save and how to, pay your bills, but also maybe how to long-term plan to support their long-term goals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So our core programming is financial literacy, faith and spiritual development, life coach and mentoring, and then mental health support. We also offer other programming. We have cooking classes. We have other types of therapies. But yes, to your point, our model is stable housing is one of our pillars. Mm-hmm. And we were very intentional when we started that we actually physically provide housing for the youth, because our thought was, if we can provide that housing stability, and if you want to say kind of take that off of their plate, that would help allow them to focus on the other things that they need to address. Because if they're worrying about where they're going to stay or where their next meal is going to come from, they're not going to care about a job or going to school or things like that. So if we can provide some of those basic needs and that stability that Vernell and I were talking about earlier, that's huge.
And that's a great model because it teaches them what to expect when it's their time to go and look for their own housing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Gives them kind of a framework. So Vernell, when we think about young people leaving high school or aging out, we know that many impacted by foster care or kinship care or not have no idea what they want to do with their grown-up life. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. That's not uncommon, but it seems to me that there might be some added layers and weights associated with that for a kid that's leaving foster care or relative care. Why would that extra weight feel bigger for them to try and tackle? Again, you talked a little bit about the stability issue, but what else would they be feeling along with the stability issue that would make this weight feel like it's just something that they might just fold under?
I think because they have to learn skills and apply them at the same time. They haven't had the opportunity to practice the skills. It's like if they're living with someone, say foster care or kinship care, and they're giving them the opportunity while they're in that home to practice budgeting, practice, get a part-time job so they understand employee maintenance, have them to start arranging transportation for themselves, to appointments, make doctor's appointments. I didn't know how stressful that could be to make a doctor's appointment, but it can be very stressful for our youth. If they can give them those opportunities, the youth would be able to step into independent living with some skills. But whenever you put them in a place where they have to learn it and immediately apply it. Okay, I just learned that I need to focus on my budget. And I have a job and I got my friends over here that are talking to me that want to hang out. I got to get up and go to work the next day. So I also have to learn about setting boundaries. You have so many components that hit them at one time, and I think that's the overwhelming part where they can feel overwhelmed by having to do it all. Just the thought of having to do it all for a lot of youth is just overwhelming. And some of them will say, forget it. I know I should do this, but forget it. And I think one of the things that I dealt with a lot of youth that I served was helping them to understand that experiences are life lessons. Experiences are life lessons, but they have to learn that too. That component, I go and I apply for a job, I get the interview, I don't get the job, and then they come back with the dynamics of why didn't I get the job? And they get frustrated and they want to give up. You have to tell them to learn how to apply life experiences to help them with the next. I used to call it milestones, and they would look at me and like, Miss V, you're getting on my nerve talking about milestones. But what it was I want you to look at the situation that you just experienced and back up a little bit and see what you can learn from it. Because it can be so overwhelming to just feel like you got to step into it and everything is going to happen. They have to learn how to process that. That's why I say this. It's just overwhelming to have something just put on you. Okay, now you got to go do this. I remember one of my youth that had to make a doctor's appointment, and she was just stressed out. And I'm sitting there like, it's a doctor's appointment. But for her, it was like taking the role that my social worker once had that she never allowed me to do. And I got to get on the phone and know exactly what it is I need to say to get what it is I need. Didn't know how to go with that. And I think that's what makes it so hard for a lot of youth. That weight is that it's just all at one time. And that's what makes it hard for them.
So practicing in real time what they literally are learning in real time.
Absolutely.
And the overwhelm that it creates is exacerbated for a kid that's got many kids in one body. So yeah, that does sound overwhelming.
Yes.
When they're thinking about what they're going to do after high school, or when they get their GED, or when they're trying to figure out what's next, how can the adults in their life come around them and kind of help them explore what a career path might look like, or what the next job path might look like? Where do caregivers start with that?
I tell people all the time, we could go to Google for everything. So I Google the jobs. A youth may say, I want to be a veterinarian. Have them to Google that and say, what do you think they involve? Okay, I love that idea. You love working with animals, and just get them to talk about what it is about the job that they're interested in, and have them to do some Google research and come back to you and say, I want you to tell me more about that, so that you can hear how the youth is really whether they're really interested in it or they thought they were interested in it. And then give them opportunities to do things like volunteer, to go to career fairs, to job fairs, talk to the school counselor about job shadowing, internships. I mean, those kind of things. See if you can connect them with someone in the community, a veterinarian that would say, I have this youth that want to go to school, and I would love for you to talk to them if you could, and just make those connections so they connect with someone that has that kind of career. For military, we have a lot of youth that go into the military. We tell them, you go Google it, find out, which branch you really want to be in. Because right now you just say, I want to go into the military. Find out about it, what it requires, how to prepare for it, and kind of get them ready. And then once you find out, be that source that can encourage them in what steps they need to take for that. Maybe you want to go talk to a recruiter, then you may go to the recruiter like, nah, that ain't for me. That's okay.
Yeah.
Let them voice, because when you think about a child, when the child is young, they want to be so many different things. I want to be a police officer, I want to be a firefighter. So you have all these ideas. And at some point, that youth may have had several ideas of things they wanted to be. So they're still thinking of that, but it may not really be a career path they want to take. But let them explore, community colleges, let them explore and open them up to opportunities that are available in your community. Then when you find out that's where they really are focused on, putting the effort to support them and find out what the next step is. This is me. I would find out what the next step is. And then I would talk to them and say, okay, do you know what the next step is? So let's look at that, and I get some insight and then I bring it to them, but I let them be the one that's looking at it like they're exploring, because I want them to explore, but I would have some information myself that I can add to them while they're exploring. Yeah. And be that listener.
Yeah, that's a good one. Be a good listener.
Yeah, if we really listen to youth, they'll tell you things that they're excited about. I had one youth, and she loved to talk about cooking for people. And I'm like, girl, that could be a career. I said, caterer, you own your restaurant, And she's like, let's be. I'm like, yeah, if you love doing it, I said, if you love doing it, that's going to come across in what you present to people. So she was like, I talked to my grandfather about getting me a little shed and putting it on his property and fixing food, because there are a lot of companies, a lot of plants around where he stayed. I was like, that's a business right there. So sometimes just listening to them, they'll tell you an interest they have, and then you just help them to say, okay, that's something you want to do. Let's look into it. How can you do that? And show that enthusiasm with them whenever they're searching that out. And I'm telling you, I've seen it happen.
Yeah. Nick, do you have anything to add to that?
I do. I think a couple of things that I would say is, one is patience. And two is, we live in a world where these youth specifically want things instantaneously. So things take time. We often, with our youth, talk about parallel or dual pathways. That, okay, this is what you may want to do, because we do try and do, career development, try and develop a career versus, quote, just have a job. But when you're looking for that career, in the meantime, you may, quote, have to have a job. So you might be, working at a store or a fast food place while you're pursuing something in the trades. Often, we've heard many stories of, you pursue a trade, but it takes a while to, quote, get that job, to get that placement, to get that apprenticeship or internship. And that's really hard. So they need to be focused and determined and patient, because we want to teach the importance of work and having a job and meeting their budget and paying their bills and things of that nature. But also we want to help them along that career path. But what does that look like, and how do you get there? So kind of, what's that end goal, and what's the path to get there?
Yeah, that's good. And the patience thing really resonates, because that's not something, first of all, at that age, they're biologically and neurologically not wired for patience.
Correct.
But then we're also in a culture that everything happens to us so fast. You can just ask any question you want and get an answer immediately. So teaching them patience and modeling patience as you're walking through the process with them that really resonates with me.
Yep.
Hey, listeners, I'm sorry to interrupt this conversation about all the many ways that we can be equipping our young people, but I wanted to ask you if you could please, at the end of the show, take a moment to share this episode with a fellow foster parent or kinship caregiver who's right now raising teens. We know that this stage of life is super complex for any family, but the added layers of transitioning a young person out of foster or kinship care into adulthood can really leave both the young people and the parents or caregivers feeling overwhelmed and confused. And your word of mouth about today's episode can go a really long way towards helping those families access the support that they need and think out of the box about how to support the young person that they're trying to launch. If this interview is resonating with you, could you also consider leaving us a rating or a review? We love to hear from our listeners. And so if you leave a review, tell us what resonated and why it resonated. And then just go ahead and follow or subscribe and like the Creating a Family podcast wherever you're listening. You can subscribe on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, wherever you're listening today. So thanks so much, and I'll let you get back to the rest of the interview. In preparation for today's interview, we sought some input from our creatingafamily.org youth advisory panel. And one of the questions they asked was how they can use things like the volunteering, the internships, the part-time work, the dual track that you talked about to figure out what they're interested in. So, Nick, can you give us kind of like a real practical or tangible way that a young person could start exploring these options, even if they're not part of a program like yours?
It's really, in my mind, a matter of providing the resources to these youth. At Bridge to Brighter, we have a number of employment resources. Vernell talked about it earlier, exposing them to opportunities, using mentors, business organizations, the community, and those community connections, those partnership connections are so valuable and important. And, it's sitting with the youth. Maybe it's encouraging them to talk with their, case manager or other individuals, a mentor, to help them pursue, their interests or their goals, essentially. So it's really providing the opportunity, providing the resources to help them achieve their goals. That's what we focus on.
Yeah. Vernell, what would be some of the moving parts that have to be considered in this? If a young person is looking at starting an internship or, getting mentored by a man in the business community, what are some of the things they have to have in place to be able to do that?
They have to have a sense of responsibility, I think, first of all, to actually follow through with the connections that you make for them. They have to have confidence, that self-confidence that this is something I can do, enabling them to step outside of the box of what they're familiar with. They need support system around them as well. They need support system because when you step into something new, it's like 1,000 questions can enter your mind. It was like, I don't know if I can do this. Should I do this? I don't know. I need to talk to my friend. Should I do that? They just go through a process and almost like a process of elimination to a degree. And you need to have support system around them to say, I think you should try it. Go for it. You're good at that. You need to give that affirmation to them, someone that's going to build them up. That's so important. They need to understand what it is that they're pursuing. I had one youth to tell me that he wanted to dig dinosaur bones. And I'm like, that's a great job. I said, but you know what? The people that are also digging dinosaur bones have to understand how to dig dinosaur bones, so you have to make it realistic. And that point he made about patience too. I had one youth that wanted to work with the shelter for animals, and he thought about being a veterinarian. I'm like, the first thing they did was have him to clean it out, and he was like, I'm just going to pet the animals. He's like, no, There's a whole
That's the
process.
reality.
In reality, it's like he was saying, that patience, there's some things you have to do to get there.
Yeah.
And I think they need to understand that. So I think being real with them, the steps, help them understand the steps that they need to take to get to what it is they want, even as far as inquiring about jobs, inquiring about careers. Like I said, you may start at one place and then they'll take you to another place because they're going to show you the different steps that you may actually have to work out in that job. That key that he made, patience, you got to have confidence. You got to be willing to get outside of your comfort zone. That's what I always tell my youth, be ready
Yeah.
to step outside of your comfort. There's so much out there for you, yeah.
It also comes to mind that a lot of young people don't know how to approach another adult. So, etiquette in the business place, how to shake hands, how to,
Yes.
send a thank you note after a good interview, some of those basics that I think sometimes
Yeah.
we just take for granted because we've been doing it for so long. And when they're brand new to that whole system, it's good to kind of walk them through how to do it. The other moving part that I would think about immediately is transportation. Do they know how they're going to get there? And do they know how they're going to get home?
Yes.
Which can
Yes.
be really daunting if that's not something they've ever had to think about before. And the more moving parts that go into this process, the more they need those of us who've committed to supporting them to scaffold them so that they can get along the way themselves. And own it on their own at some point. Yeah. Nick, some of our young people are finding direction through programs like JROTC or other pathways while they're still in school. Many, many schools have excellent programs to help kids take those next steps. What are some of the other programs that you know of that are out there beyond JROTC or, the Career Center at the high school that can help kids?
There's a couple of programs, like we work and partner with other organizations in the trades. So we are helping the youth, first and foremost, finish school.
Yeah.
So if there's programs within the high school that they can pursue, we will look at those. Some youth come to us who have not finished school, so then we partner with some other programs and organizations where they can finish school and learn a trade or pursue a trade with the potential of, employment or an apprenticeship or an internship after that. And then we also work and partner with organizations based on the interests of the youth. So, we had a youth who is interested in business and finance. So we try and use our resources and connect them to businesses and organizations where they can pursue that. So again, I talked earlier about being quote resource rich.
Yeah.
It's having those partnerships and relationships. Yeah. We do work with like the state of Wisconsin, like their apprenticeship program, the Department of Workforce Development, where we're always informing the youth of those opportunities. Going back to what I said earlier, though, kind of the patience of the youth, like what it takes to get to the point of getting that. Yeah. And so it's walking them through that process. But we've had a number of youth, pursue internships, apprenticeships, and whatnot.
So for foster parents or grandparents who are raising grandkids or aunts and uncles who are raising nieces and nephews, start with your local high school, even if your young person is not enrolled in the high school presently. Start with the local high school and ask what they have available. Ask if they have job training. Ask if they have a tech school. Ask if they have mentorships available. Ask if they have a program to help your young person finish high school. Yep. And what's available, start there. But then as a foster parent or a kinship caregiver, start leveraging the relationships in your life that are around you already with people that are all on this kid's team. Yeah. And what can they offer and bring to the table to help this young person feel supported and start to explore what's available to them?
Yeah, one other option that I forgot to mention was the community schools.
Oh,
like
yeah.
the local community colleges.
Yep.
Mhm.
That's a great resource. The really good thing about that as well is they can take like a single class to see if they have some interest and if that's something that they want to pursue. And when you take a single class like that, typically they will help guide you on the process of pursuing that.
Right.
So we strongly encourage the young men that we work with, if they're interested in some topic, whether it's culinary or something else, take a culinary class, take a trades class, get the information, kind of how we talked about earlier, that you get those experiences, and then as you talked about, leveraging those to achieve your goal.
Yep. And if you are raising a foster young person and they are still part of the foster system before they age out, they often, well, even after they age out, many states offer financial benefits to young people who want to do higher education, whether it's trade school or community college or four-year college. So start looking into what the financial benefits in your state are for education.
Yep, correct.
Yeah. And speaking of financing and education, Nick, financial literacy is another thing that came up really strongly among our youth advisory panel members. What do you see as the most important money skills a young person needs to have or develop before they leave care?
The list is long, but financial literacy is super important. I mean,
Yeah.
all youth should have it. Just learning to budget, save money, learn how to pay your bills.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we work with our youth on, like when the youth come to us, all of them have a lease. They're required to pay rent. It starts at a lower level and then increases over time. And the goal is by the time that they leave, they're paying 100% of rent. We offer like a match savings program at Bridge to Brighter, trying to teach them to save. I mean, most of these youth have not had money before or never received a paycheck. So when they get it, they're like, oh my gosh. And kind of teaching them, okay, this much needs to go to rent. This much needs to go to pay your phone bill. This much needs to go to pay your utility bill, this much for food. And, we want to try and save a little bit. And then here's what you have left to spend. So it's a process. And it kind of all goes back to what we talked about earlier of that lack of family stability and like the housing stability. All that instability just impacts them so greatly.
Yeah.
They're in that state of fight or flight and like survival mode all the time. So that it can be really difficult and it's hard. It takes time. And, our goal is to see them succeed. But in all honesty, I mean, think about it. They're 18 years old. They didn't have a place to stay. So now they have housing stability, but they have to pay rent and all that. That's a lot. As Vernell was talking about it earlier, that's overwhelming. So we have found for our youth, having them like focus or concentrate on more than one thing at a time is very much overwhelming.
Exactly.
And so working with them and alongside them to provide them that support to get there. But I mean, I think about, myself turning 18 or, I have older children that, still look to mom and dad for support.
Yeah.
And that doesn't go away. And the fact that these youth did not have that. So it's kind of checking your expectations and making it so it's manageable for the youth. You really have to break it down so it's not overwhelming to them.
Right. So for now, let's talk a little bit about some of the simple ways that a caregiver who's, getting ready to launch a young person, what's one thing a foster parent can start doing to help a young person learn those skills?
Learning how to manage money.
Yeah.
I say take them grocery shopping. Take them grocery shopping and have your list and tell them what your budget is. And then let them help you rather to navigate what to purchase.
Mm-hmm.
What to purchase. And you sit in the car and let them go in and shop with the grocery list and the budget. Then you're letting them have practical implication of how to actually manage their money. Give them an allowance. And then, if you know the youth wants something, say, okay, this is something you want to purchase. So this is your allowance. So how are you going to manage your money so you can do that? And start watching them, allow them to practice things like that. I think I've heard some people say that they would say, okay, your phone bill is, and you have to pay so much on the phone, but that's good because you're teaching them, I'm giving you the responsibility to make that payment. Now you got this money in your hand. It's up to you. But I'm giving you the responsibility of making that payment, and just start letting them gradually take steps where you're seeing them implement what you're teaching them as a practical part of transitioning into adulthood, and they start practicing while they're with you. Even go over the bills of the home, and just say, these are some of the things that you will encounter when you move on your own. And this has to be paid every month. Let them sit with you and watch how you manage that money. If this month, okay, the electric bill was really high because the air was on day and night, okay, we're going to have to lower that down, so it don't be as high next month. Just practical steps that they can take to actually start implementing skills while they're still there. Right in the home.
And that takes a degree of vulnerability and humility on our part as the adult guiding them through this process. It can be embarrassing if we're not managing our own things wisely or well. And I'm not just talking about the finances part, but if you don't manage your grocery plan well, you don't manage your meal planning well, or any of those things, exposing your own lack to a kid who's trying to learn can be pretty humiliating and humbling for us as adults, but it's worth it if it means that we're helping them set themselves up for success in their own next steps.
And it can sometimes also show the adult skills that the youth may have.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Exactly. Yep, we're on the same wavelength. They might be helping you straighten some things up.
I've seen that happen with one of my youth. I really did. I saw that happen. She learned things and she went back and she showed her mom how to do things that helped the family.
Yeah.
And that would even build even the confidence in that youth. Oh, I can do this,
Yeah, that can really increase trust between the young person and the adult also. I think about it, the modeling of that humility and the modeling of that curiosity. So I may not be doing it the best way, and you've learned a new way to do it. So I'm happy to learn that from you. And one of the best examples of that is technology. And our kids are digital natives. They have just grown up in this digital culture. So navigating apps for budgeting or navigating apps for managing screen time or for meal planning or things like that may feel really foreign to us. But if we let them teach us, then we're kind of doubling the impact of what they're learning and preparing to do.
Yeah, I always say I learn much more from the young men that we serve than they learn from me.
Isn't that true? It's so true.
Same
it's
here.
So true.
Same here.
So let's talk in the vein of teaching and mentoring. Let's talk a little bit about how mentors can shape a young person's future. Because one of the questions that came up with the youth advisory panel was, what does a healthy mentor look like? And why would I even need one? If I'm already in a foster care situation, I'm already in a kinship care situation, why would I need then a mentor too? So Nick, can you give us a little bit of a...
Yeah, in my mind, mentorship or a mentor can make all the difference. That safe person that youth can go to and feel comfortable with and share and be vulnerable, which is super important, is huge. So whether it's, some youth come to us with a mentor, and so obviously we encourage them to continue that relationship. We also partner with some organizations that have mentorship programs. And then we also have people who inquire within Bridge to Brighter about being a mentor to our youth. So there's a number of different avenues where that mentorship component can happen. I also, it's also part of kind of our core programming. So that happens there. Sometimes that's much more like a group setting, but then we try and, individualize it. So Yeah, I just think it makes all the difference. It helps with all these different areas. Being able to talk to somebody about, a job, a personal relationship, a financial topic or issue. I think you just see a difference in the youth when they have that connection and relationship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, Vernell, for a young person who may not have had a lot of safe adults in their corner thus far, how would you get them started on looking for a mentor that would be a good fit for what they need?
I think I probably would start with how you can benefit them, what to look for in a mentor, even identifying boundaries. Sometimes with some of the youth that I have worked with, there's a desire for connectedness, but some connect too soon.
Right.
And so you want them, I would always talk to my youth about getting to know the person that you're spending time with. That engagement with that youth is so important. That engagement with the mentor is so important. Making sure it's someone that is going to allow you to be you and allow you to work on what you want to work on. You don't want to connect with someone and they're having the whole conversation and you're the youth that's listening. That's not going to help you. It's got to be an equal partnership where the youth can express themselves and the mentor is going to bring you some insight, that they may have from life experiences. It's got to be that connection. But I always tell the youth, and I tell the parents, if that connection is not right, and these youth are sharp, they're sharp as a tack,
they know.
It's okay. It's okay. Let me know, let somebody know, because that may not be the fit for you. And that's not saying anything about that person. It's just that some people just, I can't relate. I can't, so you just got to have that connectivity. Just be aware. Just be very aware. There are agencies. They have a lot of kinship organizations and Say So. I don't know if you're aware of Say So, which is a great organization for foster care youth where they can connect with other foster care youth. And then they have youth that have aged out of foster care, but they're now working for the organization. Great place to get mentors because they can relate to you.
Yeah.
We have a kinship conference coming up for the state in the East and the Western area. And that's a great place to connect with other people that you can, possibly find a mentor, find what you like, and then talk to that person and see, if that person is willing to just spend some time to invest in you. There's so many doors out there for it.
So you're looking for somebody that's going to, that you're going to gel with, and then you're looking for someone that's going to go the distance with you and let you be yourself and explore the passions and the interests that you have. I'd like to hear from each of you beyond those practical skills. What are the character traits? And now it's getting a little bit more personal, but what are the character traits that the young people in our circles need to develop and set themselves up to thrive in adulthood? Nick, I'll let you go first with a couple character traits that you think are probably the most important, and then we'll shift to Vernell.
So I think I would start with hope. They need to have a sense of hope. They've had so much heartache, struggle, trauma, and a sense of hopelessness. So a sense of hope, a sense of belonging, resilience, motivation, determination. Those are like the big ones for me that we focus on, because these young people are just like everybody else. They have dreams, that they have goals, but they honestly don't feel like they belong or that they can achieve them, or, they've been told their entire life that they're terrible or whatnot, or have experienced abuse or neglect or whatever. So, I think hope, resilience, determination.
Those are good. Those are good.
Yeah.
Vernell, would you add to that list?
Absolutely. I would say they need to identify their inner strengths, a self-awareness of who they are.
Self-awareness is a good one.
Self-confidence. One thing that I loved about being a life set specialist is seeing the youth catch what it is we were trying to share with them, and just seeing their face just light up like I got it. And when you see that, it's like it stirs something in them to dream beyond that. And that's what you want. So they're seeing their inner ability to be beyond what they experience, what they've heard about, like he was saying, what they heard about themselves, what people project about themselves. And with that, when they get that, they're going to think outside of the norm of what they have experienced. Yeah. So that self-awareness is so important. And that self-confidence is going to come when they get that self-awareness. Whenever you have somebody else to set the parameters of how you live your life, and that's what, the situations that they be in can do, it makes them think inside a box, and you got to help them to see themselves outside that box. And once they do that, you can forget it. They're just going to bloom. They're going to bloom. And I think that's so important. That's so important. That's one of the keys that I've seen work for them when they get that self-awareness.
That's great. That's great. Self-awareness is a skill that many, many of us, no matter our age, could really improve upon.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying for myself.
Yeah. We're all there.
Yeah. Here's one final interruption to tell you about the Jockey Being Family library of free courses that we are honored to offer you thanks to Jockey Being Family's support. The library can be found at bit.ly/JBF support. That's bit.ly/JBF support. And it's full of courses that are free that you can use to build your parenting skills, learn how to talk to your young people, learn how to communicate with them better, learn how to support them through the various challenges that they are facing, and to make your whole family stronger. So go to bit.ly/JBF support. And thanks again to the Jockey Being Family Foundation for their support in this effort. So, Nick, many of the youth in foster care or living with a relative while they're, finishing high school and getting ready to launch into adulthood are carrying significant trauma, wounds from earlier chaos, neglect, rejection, instability, all those things. And they all kind of come to a head in this season of life where then there's all these adult expectations being put on them at the same time. We all know that when we're very wounded and broken and hurting, it can stunt our ability to grow these great character traits or these great life skills. So how important is that healing process while they're still in our homes? And how do we practically set them on that path for healing?
Yeah. It's extremely important. It's essential. Mm-hmm. Healing is one of our other pillars. And it's in our mission statement that we want to help them heal. And what, foster parents, kinship parents can do, is make sure that youth has the stability that they need, that they have the support that they need, that they feel that love and sense of belonging, and reassuring them that they can do anything and that, you're there for them. The youth that are aging out, they don't have that fail safe. Like if something happens or they have a situation or whatever, they have nobody to fall back on but themselves. So in a foster situation or a kinship situation, making sure that they know that there's somebody there with them, for them. And that's really essential. And then providing them the resources that are out there, connecting them with, if it's mental health support, if it's, an activity that helps them deal with an issue that they have. So that's just that sense of kind of, you got my back.
Yeah. Our calm, regulated presence.
Yep.
And our willingness to help them find the path that will help them heal.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Vernell, what do you think are some of the mistakes that adults might make when they're trying to prepare one of these young people for adulthood?
waiting to help provide the youth with skills. I love what he said. He said, trying to get them early, get them as early as possible and start working with, working on their goals. I love the Casey life assessment. It's a test that you can do for youth in foster care. They can be kinship care. And it actually is an assessment to tell where the youth is. Do you know how to navigate the internet? Do you know how to set doctor's appointments? Do you know how to cook if you wanted something to eat? So it goes through emotional, every gamut of life. And it asks the questions. And if the youth completes that with the caregiver, kinship caregiver, foster care mom, they will see where the youth is okay and where the youth needs to build skills. And so I think that would be something like that is a great tool to help find out what they need so you can start addressing that. Don't wait till, they got 3 months and then they're going to be turning 18,
Right.
And then you're going to say, well, you need to take care of all these things. No, find out where they are. Do it while they're young so you can start building that. And then you can see, where the youth is gaining. And then you can see where you need to also put more emphasis on. I think things like that is very important. Very important.
And the reality is, when we're fostering, we don't always know how long we're going to have with them. But for whatever time they are in our homes, and actually that's true of kinship care as well, we don't know how long they're going to be with us, but for whatever time we have with them, intentionally pouring in these resources and this you can do it mentality and I'm with you mentality, those messages, starting small, have them start by just boiling a pot of pasta. Simple, easy steps to learn how to feed themselves. Have them make a quick omelet, teach them how to do that. Just those basic skills, starting them as soon as you can, working by their side through the process. That's really good. Another mistake that I often see is that they are just assuming that the young person can't do it. And that's sometimes because they know more of the young person's history or the more of the young person's context. And so they just assume, he's, for example, if they have a disability, he can't because he's never, learned how to do this. Well, they're in your home. Let's take some time to teach them. And for example, I have a young person in my home who is hearing impaired in one ear. Well, I'm never going to assume that a child who has significant hearing loss can't excel at music because I've got lived experience that says my kid is now a flute virtuoso. She's fantastic. And so I can say, yeah, you have a disability, but there's things you can do that you can shine elsewhere. And just getting rid of that mentality that they can't is what I'm trying to say. Nick, would you have anything to add to the mistakes that you see some foster parents or caregivers making?
No, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, just that mentality of these youth, again, have goals and dreams like everybody else, and they can do it. They just need to be taught the independent living and life skills because unfortunately they do come to us ill-equipped. They haven't been taught those, often no fault of their own. So
the power of yet. They can't yet. And while they're here, I'm going to teach them.
Yes.
Okay, so for caregivers who have these young people living in their homes right now, listeners who are going, okay, so this is a lot to take in, what is maybe a first step or two? Nick, we'll start with you, that a foster parent or a caregiver can do like tomorrow. One simple step they can start with tomorrow.
I would say, it's setting up a routine, setting up some goals, setting up, a path on something that they want to achieve. Give them something to be in charge of. Give them responsibility to show that they can do things, that they can move towards achieving something. Because again, a lot of them feel like they can't or don't know how.
Yeah. Vernell, how about you? What is one thing they can start tomorrow?
Have a conversation. Just have a conversation with the youth. And let the youth share what their goals are. What is they like? What are they looking forward to? That's a good question. What are you looking forward to? And then that can help you to help the youth navigate themselves toward that direction. And that can address a whole lot of things that Nick just mentioned, goals that you help to set for them after they say what I'm looking forward to. You help them set those goals to start walking toward that. But that listening conversation, and let the youth speak so they can share what they want to share and not what we as adults may want to hear. That's important. That's important. If they feel heard, they'll talk.
That's so good. That's true. And that's true of any teenager, whether they're impacted by the foster care system or living with you as a kinship care young person or not. The only other thing I would add to that is start sharing some of the decision-making powers in your home in a very simple, practical way. Let them pick what's for dinner. Let them pick where you're going for, ice cream after dinner, or let them pick what movie your family's going to watch this weekend. Including them in the decision-making process tells them, I see you as a burgeoning adult, and I see that you're trying to make those steps. And so I'm going to walk with you. And decision-making can feel very overwhelming for a young person who's had no control over what's going on in their life thus far. And so just simple choices, simple decisions that you can make collaboratively can make a huge difference towards how they see themselves. Yeah. Okay, so I have one last question. I think that this might be a hard one to narrow down to one, but I want to know and you can each take a turn at it. What is one life skill that you think every teenager across the board should learn before they're 18? Nick, you go first.
I would say the financial literacy, the budgeting is so important and key for them.
Like a cornerstone.
Yep.
Yeah. And Vernell, give me one life skill they should learn before they turn 18.
Oh, he took mine. But I would say setting healthy boundaries is important.
So good.
Because that can also affect finances as well.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's a really important one.
That's a really good one. Well, on that positive note, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for taking time to join us today to talk about preparing foster youth and kinship youth for the realities of adulthood. I appreciate your time and your expertise. I also appreciate the really hard and impactful work that you do in the communities where you're serving. And I'm sure that in the roles that you're in, you don't get a ton of thanks from a ton of people. So I'm saying thank you for the work that you do to serve our young people.
Thank you.